Discover the Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast, hosted by Tiffany, Benitez, and Jordan Franklin. Here, the complexities of being a woman in the tech industry are unraveled through discussions on key issues, personal growth, and how to succeed despite systematic challenges. It's a source of empowerment and inspiration for all women at all stages of their tech careers. We have another episode that we are bringing to you today, and man, oh man, am I so excited about our guest today. So we have Danyel Bischoff-Forsyth with us, and I am so excited, if you do not already know Danyel, to share her with each and every one of you. She has over 33 years in technology. She did 28 years at Hallmark Cards, 5 years at Tyson Foods, and is now the CTO at Seven Brew Coffee. Seven Brew. I'm just going to stop there for a second because I probably live most of my life on Seven Brew. But yes, she has a bachelor's in computer science, an MBA, and recently she obtained her doctorate in organizational change and leadership from the University of Southern California. She completed her doctoral dissertation on increasing the representation of women in executive technology leadership roles. Perfect topic for why we are here today. She is also a board member of Net Zero, which mission is to eliminate food waste. And outside of her career, because we always like to talk about who we are outside of our careers and our jobs, she's a mama 6 and a Gigi to 2. Danyel, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. It's great to be here.
You have such a great bio, but I do have to harp real quick. Mom of 6. Wow. That's fantastic. I have 3 and I don't know how you did that. So congrats on that too. That's a huge accomplishment. I always like to set the scene. You know, we are here for a podcast. Our purpose is to really dig in and talk about topics that matter to girls and women in technology, bringing awareness to many of those topics that we never talk about outside of our little comfort zone. But we really want to talk about authenticity across the space. And with that being said, Daniel, what does authenticity mean to you?
So authenticity, I think, has really transformed over the course of my career for me. And it is really getting comfortable with who I am and bringing that to everything that I do, whether it's at work or at home. I am the same person and I know what I bring, and it's just being myself.
I love that. We compartmentalize so much as women, I think, like here's what I do at home and here's what I do at work. But I feel like that release of being your whole self in all of those environments is key. We heard your bio. You've had a phenomenal career journey. What we really try to hone in is because a lot of women are either in tech figuring out what to do next. So you have that with regards on what that looks like for women in leadership. We also have a lot of women that are wanting to come into tech and have this overwhelming feeling that it's just too big and scary. We hear that a lot from a multitude of people. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you made your journey into tech and kind of how you overcame and really just succeeding to the level that you've gotten today?
Sure. I think there are a few things to probably call out. It has been 33 years, so it's a lot to draw upon, but I think there are a couple of things that really come to mind. So I got in tech in high school, and I knew then that I wanted to go into programming. And so for me, that was the path I took. And I'll tell you, right after I got my first programming position, I realized, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my career. And so what I realized is there's so many different paths when it comes to tech. So I ended up pursuing a project management, people management route, and then proceeded to have lateral movement across nearly every space in tech. And there's so much out there that whatever appeals to you, there's something in the tech field that would meet that need. And I think it's just get out there and see what it is and see what you're drawn towards. And there are several avenues you can take. So that's what I would say as far as advice for those looking to get into it and those that are there. For those that are there, you ask about a couple of barriers. A couple come to mind for me. So I think the first one to mention is, there's still this expectation of gendered roles that the woman's going to be the caregiver, going to do all the housework, going to, can't travel because they have duties at home. I mean, people make assumptions about gender and role in work. And I think that's an unfortunate, almost reality, because those assumptions exist. And it's one of the hardest things to overcome. And so for me, it was about being very overt with my managers, with those that I work with, about what I can and cannot do. And just letting them know, being very transparent about that, and making some choices, putting in place some things that, and a support system that allowed me to do some of the things to continue to advance, were choices that I made. I would say that the second thing when it comes to barriers is, and it's a part of that support system, but it's really about having a great life partner. If you're going to have a life partner, have one that's going to be really supportive about helping you get over those barriers. Right? When you end up in a jam, they're there to help work you through it, help support you as you figure out a solution to that. And so I think that's another thing that I would tell. I wish somebody would have told me that early on, how important that was. I chose well, so I feel like I lucked out, but I would say be very deliberate about life partners and what that looks like. Those are just a couple.
I think you also said, with the life partner, right? I think it goes hand in hand, but you also said building your network, right? Your network, we talk all the time about building your network in work, right? But as a female, and just in general, like you said, there's also gender bias about, like, that's everything we have to do, right? Is take care of the kids. But building that network with people to help you do that, to enable you to take the next step or to move up within your career, that's a huge thing too, right? There's something to be said about that. And without that network, it makes it almost impossible, right?
I would agree.
I think that, you have 6. Again, I have 3, so half. But you have to have that network, or just tonight we have 3 baseball games. And so, like, without a network of people helping, there's no way to do anything else other than running kids like a taxi.
I would agree. And, I'll share this with you too. I think there's this element of, no shame, right? It's like, you don't judge other people. They don't judge you. If you make choices to leverage a carpool to get your children to and from practice, that's your choice. That's your family's choice. It's really nobody else's business to judge you for that. It's nobody else's business. If, in my case, I made a deal with my children that I would go to 50% of their events. Again, may be different for you. You may make a different choice, but for me, that was the decision. And then from there, we were very transparent and planned around that within our family. And so some games I went to, half of them I did not. My kids knew when I was going to show up. My kids knew when I wasn't going to be able to make it. And it was so fantastic, because there was one time when my son, who played baseball, had a doubleheader. And he called me and he said, "Mom, I have a doubleheader tonight. I know you're going to make it to one of the games. I want to let you know you'd love to see me pitch, and I'm pitching in the second game. So if you can make it work, you'll probably want to come to the second game." And I thought, how healthy is that? And then when I walk into that second game and haven't been to the first, and I have the other moms looking at me, it's okay.
It's okay, because you've set the expectations, but that also goes for your teams that you've been managing, right? So you've been managing this home team, but also it goes hand in hand with your day job as well, of being a good manager, setting those expectations. And you want that worker that comes to you and says, "Hey, you want to see me succeed? I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and this is when I'm doing it," right? Like, that's the person you want.
Right, without a doubt.
But we talk about these women in technology and how they kind of burn out by a certain age. And I feel like some of that is not managing their own expectations of themselves or their home team, right?
But that's because we're not talking about it. Like, if there are no spaces like this where we are intentionally talking about it, we're not. Right? We're just off, like, trying to do all the things, and no one's really turning back to say, "Hey, I sort of figured out a way to do this." Like the things you're telling us right now, Danyel, like, we have to create spaces, and not just on a formal podcast, in everyday conversations where we're walking people through, like, set your boundaries. Whatever you set is what they expect. That is not exceeding to them. That is now your norm. And then when you say, "I'm really getting burnt out, so I'm going to work 100% instead of 110, it doesn't matter that you're outperforming everyone else. You're doing below what you've always done. So you might end up with, like, a needs improvement, but it's like, boundaries are really hard. And if you don't set them in the beginning, I always use this metaphor, like, it's like giving someone $100 and then being like, "Just kidding, can I have 30 back because I decided to, like, set some boundaries?" And then you don't want people to be offended, but hello, like, we've got to start practicing really talking about it, because the awareness comes from talking about it. but then actually really practicing some of those things. And I don't know, I love how you kind of really focused in on making sure that your kids knew what to expect, and that who cares if the other moms are judging you. Right. Also, ladies, can we stop judging when a mom drops off cookies instead of coming to every party? Like, some of us are just trying to survive and get our families like through it. So if I could just say that, and then we could just move on, but just stop. Like, the judgment is horrible.
I agree. You know, it's really interesting I have to tell you, I've made a lot of mistakes until we figured out this 50% arrangement. And I was literally found myself driving 100 miles an hour down the highway, showing up late to a soccer game anyway. And they noticed when I walked in late. And so I had a friend of mine that asked me, when I told her, I shared with her that I was going to make this commitment and this promise to my family. And her comment was, well, I don't understand, if you can make it to 100%, why wouldn't you make it to 100%? And I thought, you know, because I'm tired of driving 100 miles down the highway, being late anyway, and not being fully present. And so what I can do is commit to this promise I am making my family, who I care the most about. And that's really all I care about, what they think. Yeah. Then I'm good. I'm good with that. They're good with the 50. I'm good with the 50. And so, and you know, now half of them are grown, half of them are not out of the house yet, but I'm seeing that it's a great relationship with them. We have mutual respect. You know, they understand that, you know, how difficult it is to juggle family and career, especially now. You mentioned I have 2 grandbabies. You know, they're starting to see how difficult this is. And hopefully I modeled for them maybe a potential way that it could also work in their household.
Yeah. Well, and I also think, like, and I'm going to tie this back to a question about authenticity, but I think what you said at the beginning of our conversation was you have to be your authentic self at home and at the workplace. That means if I don't care what the other moms are saying about X, Y, and Z, then I probably don't care what else is being said, but I'm going to speak my mind at work too. So how would you say that authenticity has influenced your leadership style and decision-making within the workspace?
So I have a very precise moment in my career that I realized how important it was for me to be me. And it's been about 20 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. So at that time, I was a director in tech, and my team supported a website, our .com site. And so lots of pressure, right? It needs to be up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we had an incident where the website was down. And so I rallied the troops. They were waiting in a room for me to come, where we were going to determine our game plan very, very quickly, right? This was a very urgent situation. Well, at that time, my boss texted me and said, you know, get down to my office now, because he had heard we had an outage. And so I thought, all right, told the team, I'll be right there, going to run down and see what the boss wants. And so I walk into his office, and he says to me, look, I know we're down. And I said, yeah, the team's waiting. We're going to huddle. We're going to figure out next steps. Got it. And he said, you need to go up there and you need to pound on the table and yell and let them know how serious the situation is. And I was like, I got this. Okay, I hear you. It's serious. I got it. And so I walked out of there, and as I walked to meet with the team, I thought, oh boy, pound the table and yell. That's not Danyel. For those that know me, that's not me. I can be awfully intense, but I'm not going to be pounding and yelling. And so I get up to the room and rally the troops, right? Come up with a quick game plan. Everybody knows what they're going to do. We get ready to break. And I said, oh, team, by the way, if my boss sees you in the hallway, can you please tell him that I pounded the table and yelled? And I had a gentleman that was about 20 years older than me, very seasoned, steps up from, so we were huddling, there's 50 people in the room. He's in the back, he steps forward and he says, Danyel, we're crystal clear on what we need to go do. We heard you, we understand. If you would have walked in and pounded the table and yelled, we would have been unable to hear anything that you said from that point forward. And he taught me the biggest leadership lesson, I think, of my career, which was I have to be me to be effective, to be heard, and to be comfortable in who I am and how I get things done. And so, and I also then would tell you from that point forward, I very deliberately try not to do that to my teams. I tell them where we're going or where we're heading, but I want them to do it in the way that is comfortable to them. And however that is their way. I'm not going to tell them the how to get there. And I try very, very hard to maintain that with my direct reports as well.
Yeah, well, and especially since you're the ones, like you said, they're your direct report, right? So you hire them. you're probably the best person to communicate with them. If you come in and communicate in a completely different style than what you've been managing them in, there's no response to that. That's just like I'm going to go get dad to get you in trouble. Yeah. They're just going to shut down. And it's just not a healthy way. And I 100% agree with your pushback on that.
Yeah. One thing I'll tell you that I have always admired about you, Danyel, is that you are not afraid to be vulnerable. And I think even in the example that you just gave, you came in and you were vulnerable with what the problem is and what we need to do to fix it, and didn't dance around that. And I think that vulnerability and authenticity really go hand in hand. And I think you have to be able to embrace being a vulnerable leader, like not always having it together, or not having the pounding on the table or the perfect pretentious like solution, right? You just said you let them think about the solution. And I think it's those moments that give you greater power and influence. And I want to know what your thoughts are on that. Like, how does vulnerability, which ties to authenticity, lead to truly a greater power or influence?
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, Women in Technology of Northwest Arkansas and Gumption at my-gumption.com for their support. Their contributions are critical in bringing these meaningful conversations to you. Stick around for more engaging discussions right after this break.
Well, I mean, I think that whole idea of being vulnerable is saying, I don't have the best solution, but certainly the team does. And so it's no secret, anybody who knows me, I mean, my MO is to surround myself with the most amazing talent ever and the most amazing diverse talent. So people that are going to come in and think differently and have different backgrounds and different experiences and different perspectives and even different styles. Because what will happen is, I mean, that's when the magic happens. You bring a group of people together that with all of those different experiences and backgrounds, and they're going to bounce ideas off of each other and come up with the best solution. And so for me, I've seen it happen a million times. And so I'm very comfortable going in and saying, even if I have an idea, I will save it. And I will only, if it would add to the debate or the discussion going on, do I even add that to the mix. And if I see that things are going and developing in a way where, and usually this is what happens, and they come up with a fantastic approach, then yay for the team. I mean, that's what it's all about, is to allow them to come up with the solution.
And I would say it comes from being a mom, like really understanding, like you skin your knees, and that's mom and dad both do this, right? So men and women both play the skin your knees, and you're going to learn a little bit better than if I come in and it's basically teaching a man to fish versus fishing for them, right? And that scenario is always ideal. I love that too. So here's my question. What kind of support networks did you seek out? We talked about support networks within our home to make sure that our home life is good, right? So we've got to take care of us first. And then what support networks did you reach out to and use, and what would you suggest other people to use to progress their career?
Sure. Oh, well, so I would say, I mean, going back to the whole barriers for women in tech is there's many times, I mean, we've seen the statistics. A lot of times we're the only one in the room. It can be a very lonely place. And so I would tell you that networks are going to allow you to get things done, allow you to have that camaraderie. Yeah, they're just absolutely essential. So I have multiple networks, and I would credit them for my success. So one of them would be, and it's not necessarily a network, although if you have a mentor circle, it can be more of a network. Mentoring is, I would almost say, an absolute requirement at any stage in your career. Some of the best mentoring I had was reverse mentoring and my peer mentorship relationships. So I would seek out somebody that's probably higher up, as well as peer mentoring others. That entire ecosystem of people wanting to help others is so uplifting and so fantastic and so informative from a development standpoint. So mentoring, number one. With that, I'm inclined to say that sponsorship is even better. To have somebody, I would say it's a level up from a mentor where they're going to, sacrifice their own political capital to support you and advance you. That would be the ideal. But at a bare minimum, get involved in mentor circles or mentoring. And then I would say I would diversify your network. So, if you go through, I think if you went through and wrote down who the people in your network are, a lot of times they're the people closest to you, like they all look the same and they're all within your company or even your department. And so I would say really diversify your network and get external from your current department or even your current employer. That can look like women in tech organizations, which I think are fun because we're all in a unique position to have that relationship. I think women-only organizations are also great. You can get outside of tech and look at more, all women, uplifting women organizations. Those are extremely empowering. I think industry-specific networks are important. So it comes down to the fact that we are technicians. This is our profession, and staying connected there and have people you can reach out to when you have questions about a solution or approach or a vendor. It's great to have people at your fingertips to be able to provide that guidance as well. So to get involved in each of those, I think would be an important part of kind of developing this ecosystem of support.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head, right? So like, obviously, Tiffany and I are partial to women in tech, but women networking organizations are so essential. If you haven't got it, I'm in awe of everything you've done and had a family of 6, and they played sports. I mean, that's a ton, right? But you can commiserate with those people, but they also have solutions that aren't just work, right? Because nobody's just work. Everyone has a personal life, but it's also really nice to see someone highly successful say, hey, I did it and this is what I did, and I found a lot of experienced women are more than happy to be your mentors, even if it's a personal mentor versus just a work relationship. Like you said, like a peer mentor could maybe not even be in your department. They don't really understand, but they can still offer a lot of value to you. Sorry, I loved what you said. Just had a
No, it's great. Okay, might be a slightly awkward question because I know that your authenticity and I know your humility, and so this question is a little odd, but you are leaving a legacy. We are all leaving a legacy. And the reason I'm saying it's odd is because I don't think any of us sit here, well, maybe some people do, but I don't sit here and think like, what legacy am I making? I don't do that. I just do what I authentically feel like I'm called to do. But we are each living a legacy, and we're building one that we're going to leave behind for the next generation. And so I'd like to know what legacy do you want to leave behind for not just your kids, but for every generation to come, and all the girls for sure coming in this path of technology where we are only 28%.
Right. Yeah. It is a great question. And you don't think about that. I mean, when you're in the day-to-day grind, you don't, especially as I've changed careers and jobs with companies, I have reflected on, what does that look like? And with 33 years, you can do the math. I mean, I'm in the tail end of my career. And so I do think about that quite a bit, Tiffany. So for me, I think first and foremost, it's about awareness that there is an opportunity for us to do better. The numbers show that we do not have enough girls in tech. We do not have enough women in tech, that we don't have, as you go up the ladder, that we continue to have less and less numbers as a percent. There's still a real issue. Women and girls are opting out in college. They're opting out after college, left and right. And so for me, it is awareness. I want to talk about it every chance I can. I want to make sure people know there's a problem. I can use data to back it up. Because if we don't have an awareness, we're not going to even know to do anything about it. So I think awareness is a legacy, and people feeling comfortable having the conversation. I think the second thing for me is that there's two pieces. There's the organization that can do things, and there's the individuals that can do things. So second is, from an organizational standpoint, we have to set these women and girls up to succeed. And so organizationally, do we have the right supports, the right programs in place to help them? Whether that is mentoring, circles, whether that is a women in tech, whether that is services and support that they can do to help them at home with, maybe it's some grocery shopping or, whatever it is, so that they can have those supports in place, from an organizational standpoint. And then I would say third, it's on the individual, that they can be armed with tools to be able to navigate this crazy world that we live in and be able to succeed. And so whether that is training on financial literacy, whether that is helping with career navigation, I mean, you name it, right? Strategic planning, all of those skills that the women need to continue to advance. They need to know that they can go out and seek those out and empower themselves in navigating that career. So I think it's, if I can even make a little difference in any of those three spaces, then it is a victory for me.
I love that.
I absolutely love that. What would be your piece of advice for those that are looking to eventually leave a legacy, right? What would be the piece of advice you would give everyone?
Yeah, I think I wish I knew this earlier in my career, but I think it's around being really a little more deliberate. I mean, a lot of things happen because you heads down, work hard, the promotions come, the opportunities are there. But I really think that if you have a little bit more being deliberate and navigating your career and seeking out the networks and being transparent about what you need, I think that could go a long way in helping people stay in tech, advance in tech. And second to that, though, Jordan, other than just being deliberate and owning your career and navigating that, I think it's know what value you bring, know what you're great at, know what you bring, and then seek opportunities that value what you bring and be really, really clear about that. I mean, they're lucky to have you just as you're lucky to be there. And so it's both ways. Yep. And I think know your worth, know you have options, and know what you bring. And I think that will help just kind of navigate choices that you'll face through your career and make choices to set yourself up to be wildly successful. Be in a place that values what you bring.
Absolutely. And we touched on that a little bit in a previous podcast with it being men will apply themselves to a position if they fit 30% of the qualifications. Women will not do it unless they're at 100%. We have to understand that if we are 100% of what they are already looking for, then that is not the position that is meant for us. The position that is meant for us is to challenge us, and you really have to know oneself to know that, okay, I can do a position that I qualify 50% for because I have enough time to understand the other 50, right? And I
you
think
have
that
a great
goes back.
Support system, and you have a great
Exactly.
support system to figure it out and continue to succeed.
Yep, I've set my network. I've got my mentors. My home team's on base. We're good.
I love it.
You said that with your dissertation, you interviewed 9 women. Go ahead and give us that information again because it was gold.
Oh, thank you. So during the research, I interviewed 9 current Fortune 500 CTO women. And as a final question, I asked each of them if they could wave a magic wand and change one thing for the future of all girls and women in tech, what would that be? And overwhelmingly, the response was to make sure that each of them know to have the courage, know you belong, know you can do great things, and just go for it.
I absolutely love that. Yeah. Encouraging our next generation to just go for it is so much more fun than, it's maybe not for you. I love the go for it. I think we need little women in tech go for it pins.
Fantastic.
I love it.
I love it.
I love it. Okay, so thank you, Danyel, for joining us today. Thank you for sacrificing your time and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We'll have Danyel's socials at the end of this podcast so you can like and follow and see all the amazing things that she continues to do. We appreciate each and every one of you subscribing and listening in, and we will talk to you again soon.
Well, that's a wrap. Another episode of Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast. Thanks for tuning in and sharing this time with us. If you liked what you heard, please share this episode with your friends in tech. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Your support helps us keep bringing in inspiring guests and uncovering topics that matter to you. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and making your mark in the tech world. Goodbye for now.